Quorum of the Plan Commission is present, so I will call this meeting of the Madison Plan Commission of March 11th, 2024 to order. First, we will hear from our technical facilitator.
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do the best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After all registrants speak, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with a commission, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. First, we will ask for communications disclosures and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Are there any disclosures or recusals? Seeing no raised hands, going on to public comment. And as of last time I checked, there's no public comment. Thank you, Heather. Next, minutes of the February 26th regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Commissioner Heck, seconded by Alder Field. And I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Commissioner McCahill.
I'll abstain.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, the motion passes unanimously with Commissioner McCahill's abstention. Moving on to schedule of meetings. The next regular meeting is March 25th to be followed by an April 8th regular meeting, both at 5:30 and both virtual meetings. We do have a special meeting this Thursday, March 14th, and that begins at 5 p.m. rather than 5:30 p.m., and it's in room 215 of the Madison Municipal Building. Okay, next, we will move to the consent agenda. And I will read the items number, agenda item number, and then ask if there are any requests for anything to be pulled off the consent agenda. So these are the items proposed for the consent agenda. Agenda item 2, 3, 4, and then agenda item 9 to be referred to April 8th. Agenda item 14 and 15, and then for referral, agenda items 16 and 17, and then agenda item 18 and 19 were withdrawn by the applicant and should be placed on file without prejudice. And then for referral, items 20 through 29. Are there any requests for separation of any of those items? Seeing no raised hands, these items that I mentioned will be placed on the consent agenda, and I'll read the specific items into the record. First item is agenda item 2, Legistar 82281, determining a public purpose and necessity and adopting a relocation order for the acquisition of land interests required for engineering project number 13812, established for the reconstruction of Knutson Drive, Public Street, and utility improvements from Green Avenue to Northport Drive in Alder District 18. Agenda item 3, Legistar 82283, authorizing the negotiation and execution of a purchase and sale agreement between the City of Madison and VH Acquisitions or its successors for the city's acquisition of multiple parcels of land near the intersection of Marty Road, Midtown Road, and Raymond Road, and amending the adopted 2024 engineering major streets and 2024 stormwater utility capital budgets, Alder District 1 and District 20. Agenda item 4, Legistar 82312, determining a public purpose and necessity and adopting transportation project plat number 12777-3-4.06, Amendment 1 in District 19. And then for referral, agenda item 9, Legistar 81952. On the consent agenda, agenda item 14, Legistar 81564, approving a certified survey map of property owned by United Hurling Land LLC located at 10252 Mineral Point Road, Alder District 9. Agenda item 15, Legistar 81941, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Yellowstone Apartments located at 426 South Yellowstone Drive and releasing city enforcement of a platted restriction, Alder District 19. And then for referral indefinitely, agenda item 16 and 17, Legistar 78634 and Legistar 78635. And then the items 18 and 19, which were withdrawn by the applicant and should be placed on file without prejudice, Legistar 80686 and Legistar 81558. The remainder are for referral. Agenda items 20 through 29, Legistar 81917, Legistar 81918, Legistar 81919, Legistar 81920, 81921, Legistar 81565, Legistar 69792, Legistar 81559, Legistar 81954, and finally Legistar 81562. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Commissioner Heck, seconded by Commissioner Mendez. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Commissioner Heck? Okay, then we will go to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Next, we will move to our public hearings on tax incremental financing districts. First is agenda item 5, Legistar 82259, and approving the amendment to the project plan for tax incremental District 36, Capital Gateway, City of Madison, District 6, and District 12. And I believe we will hear from Dan Rolfs of the city staff. Dan?
Good evening. Happy to answer any questions that commission members may have. Brief overview of these 4 project plan amendments are essentially to provide funding as authorized in the city's adopted 2024 capital budget. This is really just the mechanics behind making those dollars available. So for instance, item number 5 for TID 36 is to provide additional funding for the public market. Item number 6, I'm sorry, do you want me to just stick with number 5 for now, Adele?
I think you can go ahead and read through those, and then we will take them up for a vote individually.
Very good. So item number 5 is providing additional funding for the public market. Item number 6 and 7 are tied together. Item number 6 provides additional funding to the Village on Park redevelopment. It is the stormwater and site work associated with additional work done for the parking structure. What's happening there is TID 44 is donating excess tax increments to TID 42. So 6 and 7 are tied together, but we have to amend the project plan for both of those districts to move money from TID 44 and then for TID 42 to accept those dollars and then expend them on that project. Finally, item number 8 that you have in front of you is to provide additional funding, for the Lake Street ramp reconstruction and amend TID 50 to do just that. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dan. We don't have any registrants. Are there any questions for Dan on any of those 4 agenda items? So again, those are agenda items 5, 6, 7, and 8. Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. Dan, just a quick question. I noticed in the one change to TID 50, it also has a redefinition of the boundaries of the TID.
Yes.
It's adding a couple of section or collection of parcels to the TID.
Yes.
Did any of the other ones have changes to boundaries, or were they just about moving the funds to the appropriate slots?
TID 50 is the only amendment that includes a boundary amendment. That amendment is being proposed to capture potential TIF generators to ensure that we have sufficient dollars to cover the costs that are being proposed for the Lake Street ramp project.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. That was my question.
Okay. Yep. Any further questions of Dan? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion on agenda item 5, Legistar 82259. Commissioner Heck.
I'll jump in, I guess. I will move that we recommend approval of agenda item 5, an amendment to the project plan for TID 36 Capital Gateway.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Mendez. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Commissioner Heck?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any comment, input, perspective on this motion? Seeing none, we'll come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we will consider agenda item 6, Legistar 82261. Do we have a motion on that one? Commissioner Heck.
I'll keep the ball rolling on these. I will move that we recommend approval of agenda item 6, the amendment to the project plan for TID 42 Wingra.
And that is seconded by Alder Figueroa Cole. Did you wish to speak to this, Commissioner Heck? Okay, any comments on this particular motion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, motion passes unanimously. Next is agenda item 7, Legistar 82262. Looking for a motion. Commissioner Heck.
I'll move that we recommend approval of agenda item 7, the amendment to the project plan for TID 44 Royster Clark.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Figueroa Cole. Again, do you wish to speak to your motion? Okay. Any comments, input on this motion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Next is agenda item 8, Legistar 82264, looking for a motion. Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I'll move we recommend approval of agenda item 8, the amendment to the project plan and boundary for TID number 50, State and Lake.
Seconded by Alder Figueroa Cole. One last chance to speak to this amendment. Okay. Or is there any input at all to this motion? Seeing none, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hand, the motion passes unanimously. The next item we will consider is agenda item 11, Legistar 81966, amending section 28.185 of the Madison General Ordinances related to approval of demolition and removal to expand considerations for property with historic value or significance. Heather.
Yes, I was going to mention item 10 was removed from consent.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
We'll
okay.
loop back to that. So if you could go ahead, Heather, on agenda item 11. You're muted.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 11 is the small change to the city's demolition ordinance, which the Plan Commission has discussed a few times since December 2022. This change, as mentioned in the drafter's analysis and the staff report, would simply provide a way for the Plan Commission to consider broader impacts on the city's adopted plans when you're considering potential demolition of a building that the Landmarks Commission has flagged as historically significant. Again, this has been discussed in special meetings. One of them was first held in December 2022, and then more recently, just last December, I believe. So this is the ordinance that would put that language, that simple change into the demolition ordinance. And Katie, Bannon, and I are here if there are any questions.
Right. Thank you. And we do have a registrant wishing to speak, neither supporting nor opposing. John Rolling, Orchard Drive, Madison. John, you have 3 minutes.
I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Good evening. I neither support nor oppose the amendment. Instead, I call upon the commissioners to defer consideration of this item pending your larger discussion of demolition process considerations, which is scheduled for, of course, this coming Thursday evening. The proposed standard 4A reads, for properties determined by the Landmarks Commission to have any historic value or significance, the Plan Commission may consider how demolition and redevelopment of the property relates to the implementation of the city's adopted plans, unquote. Well, first, the amendment is ambiguous as to its intent. Is it intended to reinforce the ordinance's existing statement of purpose, which reads, to ensure the preservation of historic buildings and to aid in the implementation of adopted city plans? Or is it to obscure the existing historic preservation goal by stressing how redevelopment of the property relates to the implementation of the city's adopted plans? Ambiguity. Second, the proposed amendment is ambiguous as to which city plans are to be considered. Shall the commission consider the city's 2020 historic preservation plan and the many neighborhood plans which reference historic resources? Or would the authors wish to specify that the plans be considered are limited to those promoting redevelopment? Third, the proposed amendment does nothing to resolve the elephant in the room. That is the larger concept of the costs and benefits of preservation. Recall that section 28185 was amended just in late 2021 to remove from the demolition standards any consideration of the future use to which the vacated land might be put. But the packet you will discuss later this week includes the suggestion that the standards be amended again, now to include consideration whether, quote, the benefits of demolition outweigh interest in preserving resources, unquote. So in conclusion, the commissioners and the Common Council should first decide on a policy with regard to the demolition of properties with historic value before amending the ordinance guiding implementation of policy. The proposed amendment is simply premature. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We do have other registrants, but none available to answer questions or wishing to speak. Oh, Heather, did you get a late registrant?
We do. We have 3 additional registrants. Kurt Steggy of Cambridge Road in opposition. Kurt, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to be brief. It's going to be hard to fit everything in here. I would join John Rowling's suggestion that this matter be referred until after the March 14th working session that you have already scheduled. I'll point out briefly some issues that I have. First of all, I'm under item 1, the use of the word review to replace consider. To me, that sends the wrong message. A review can be extremely brief, and a review can be mere cite, and cite can be ignored, versus consideration suggests weighing and mulling over. So I think in addition, the language of 28.185.7b needs to correspond with the language of 28.185.9c4. Both relate to the same topic, what the Plan Commission is supposed to do. Both should refer to receive and consider. The word review should be out of there. Receive and consider should be the appropriate language. I would say that I counted about 75 city adopted plans. Some are, I don't know if transportation plans are supposed to be included in that group or not. Certainly, there are 27 neighborhood plans, 24 special area plans, 21 neighborhood development plans. And also I'd like to reference the historic preservation plan specifically. This was adopted in 2020, but there was an important survey that was undertaken as part of that. And the survey itself is not part of the plan. So all the information relating to the historic significance of a variety of buildings, specifically relating to underrepresented groups within the city, is not part of a adopted plan as far as I can tell. Another consideration, and I don't know if the plan commissioners are aware of it, but the preservation planner does not do an on-site review, does not go and look at each individual proposed demolition site, and then go to the library and see whether there's anything in any historic reference that would be of significance.
Thank you, Kurt. That concludes your 3 minutes. Heather, did you have other late registrants?
Yes, actually, one additional speaker, Robert Kleba of East Gorham Street in opposition. Robert, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, Commissioners, and staff. I asked the Commission not to include the city's plans in its review of demolition applications. 2 years ago, I addressed the Plan Commission because of a concern about separating the review of demolition applications and land use applications. In 2022, it became apparent that demolition application reviews could not consider proposed use due to the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision, Town of Rhine versus Bazell. I worked with the Madison Trust to request the demolition application and the land use application be reviewed and voted on separately. The compromise was that they be reviewed together but voted on separately. In my opinion, this doesn't fulfill the spirit of the law, but it does require more discussion about the demolition application, and that's a good thing. The proposed amendment to MGO 28.185 proposes to allow the Plan Commission to review demolition requests as a totally separate agenda item, requiring a separate staff report and a separate vote. This part I like. However, the amendment requesting a review demolition application with respect to city plans is dangerous. I have heard from many alders that they respect the input the committees and commissions provide, that these people are the experts and their recommendations should stand. However, this final part of the proposed amendment totally disrespects any input from the Landmarks Commission. For example, I'll give you one example of impact. There are dozens of historically and culturally significant buildings in the James Madison Park neighborhood where most buildings are 2 and 3 stories. City plan for this neighborhood is 6 stories on East Wash and 4 stories elsewhere. Following this plan and the proposed changes to MGO 28.185, the Plan Commission can ignore any input from landmarks and allow the demolition of one of the most vibrant and active neighborhoods in the city. The staff report conspicuously provides absolutely no analysis of the impact of that this change might bring. However, I could enumerate several more examples. I request the Plan Commission not to approve this last part of the proposed amendment out of respect for our city's cultural heritage. If commissioners have any questions about the proposed amendment, they should at a minimum refer to the Landmarks Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Are there any further registrants, Heather, wishing to speak?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we have 3 registrants who spoke. Are there any questions of any of those registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I'll close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I have a question about a particular change that wasn't brought up in public comment, and this would be section 2 or subdivision 2, subsection 8, administrative approval. And I'm wondering if Heather or someone knows, it states that oh, wait a sec. Okay, so this is actually already in the code. It's just changing the word from than to then. So that's kind of just a language cleanup.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and just a question about that in general. When there is an accessory building, this is saying that it shall be administratively reviewed. Is it possible that the administrative review could result in staff saying, well, I think this actually needs to be approved by Plan Commission because it's a complicated situation in staff's view?
I can try that one. I can't think of an example where that would be the case. And let me clarify that anything within local historic districts or on landmark properties, even if it is an accessory building, does have review by the city's Landmarks Commission. And so this would really be for any accessory buildings. The easiest to think of is a detached garage, but a detached garage, a shed, etc. These buildings may be demolished with just administrative review rather than coming to the Plan Commission.
Okay, that kind of got to what I was thinking about. That answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Heck. Commissioner McCahill.
Thank you. I was just wondering why staff, is there any reason we shouldn't wait until after the meeting on Thursday as the registrants expected, and how that conversation will be different from this particular change?
Sure, I think that would be fine. It was our impression that the commission was eager to move forward on this smaller change in the near future. But if the commission were to decide to wait until they can have a broader policy discussion, I would note that that would probably mean several cycles of referral, because we may have a lot of work to do after Thursday's meeting to encapsulate what we hear from the commission with regard to making the broader changes to the demolition ordinance. But either way is, I don't think there's a strong feeling from the staff.
Thank you, Heather. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if Katie or Heather will explain what the changes were. What does the change does and doesn't do?
Heather?
Sure, I can start off, and then Katie, please feel free to jump in too. So the change before you now, as discussed in recent special meetings, provides a better avenue for the Plan Commission to consider the full recommendations in adopted city plans when you're making a decision about a building for which the Landmarks Commission has cautioned it has historic significance. Remember, the Landmarks Commission typically, they may find that a building has historic significance and may strongly recommend against demolition. They may just simply say it has historic significance and not make a strong recommendation. Regardless, ultimately, as decision makers, we've seen many instances in recent years, the recent year, I guess, where the commission has wished that they could apply a broader lens to a demolition proposal, and not just see the recommendation of the city's Landmarks Commission. So you're, in a sense, more able to balance historic significance with other competing, sometimes, policy interests in the city's adopted plans. And I want to say again, like I've said in special meetings, one of the good examples of this recently, I think, is the St. John's Lutheran Church site. So right downtown on East Washington Avenue, there is a church building that is fully approved for redevelopment into a mixed-use building that will have a church on the first floor and many stories of affordable housing units above it. When that proposal came through to the city's Plan Commission, there was a lot of discussion. The Landmarks Commission had recommended that the existing church is historically significant, and I think the Plan Commission really grappled with that. Ultimately, the commission did recommend approval of that demolition in the redevelopment of the site. This change here has been something that a few commissioners have really pushed for as a way to provide more clarity in the ordinance for just that opportunity, to provide you with an opportunity as a commission to look at things in a more balanced way. I hope that helps. Katie, anything that I missed that you'd like to add?
Okay. Thank you, Heather. Thanks, Katie. Did that answer your question, Alder? Yes. Any other questions of staff? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. Heather, I think you probably can answer this, but I have to confess I haven't done my homework for Thursday's meeting yet. And can you very briefly talk about the things that we'll be discussing on Thursday related to this? Or I assume
Sure.
they're fairly closely related.
Sure. I think the biggest question for Thursday is, does the commission want to see broader changes to the demolition ordinance to basically put more of the questions that currently come before you into the administrative review bucket. So the cleanest way to say that, the Landmarks Commission currently provides recommendations on any and all principal buildings proposed for demolition. A majority of those are found to have no historic significance, no concern. They're sort of the green light recommendation coming from the Landmarks Commission. Would the Plan Commission like to see a change that basically sends all of those green light recommendations from the Landmarks Commission? Should all of those become administratively reviewed instead of becoming items on the Plan Commission agenda? So I want to say that's the biggest question before you, and the nuances there are still very open to input and discussion. But I think that's the kind of the question that we want to focus on Thursday.
Thank you. That answered my question.
Thank you. Any further questions of staff? Seeing none, is there a motion? Alder Duncan.
Motion to approve amending section 28185 of the Madison General Ordinance related to approval of demolition and removal to expand considerations for properties with historic value or significance.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Mendez. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Alder Duncan?
Just that I think that with the work that has been done on this already since 2022 to this point, I understand the concern of waiting until Thursday to dig deeper into this ordinance. I think that, as we've seen a lot of times, even on Common Council meetings, that if there are things that need to be revised after this, we can always bring it back. But to have this hanging out potentially, as Heather had stated, 3, 4, 5 more meetings down the road, I think that this is something that a lot of commissioners were wanting to move forward, and I think this is the time to do it.
Thank you, Alder Duncan. Any other discussion of this motion, of this change? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. This is kind of unusual. I feel like in general, I'm in favor of this, but I think what we're doing is just putting into the ordinance really what we already do. I mean, it's just like the court case that was referenced in public comment. We're not supposed to consider future use, wink, wink, and we do it a lot without speaking those words. And this isn't quite as far along as considering future use. I think it's pretty clever, actually, to say we're just going to consider the overall city goals and plans. So we're not considering a specific development project that's been proposed or is coming. So we're still following the court case, the guidance from the court case. I actually think it's okay to think about those greater plans, but I have some trepidations about whether or not we can actually do that in practice. We already have a difficult time not thinking about future uses. This is perhaps not quite so far along, but I think when we talk about plans, let's say, we're going to be thinking about a particular development project that we anticipate is coming or has already been proposed. So I don't think it's much different. So it's clever though, as I said, and I'm still nervous about doing it because I think we're actually on a slippery slope of considering future use, which we're not supposed to do. So I'm not sure how I'm going to vote those. That's just my thinking out loud. Thanks.
further comments? Commissioner McCahill.
Thank you. So I didn't raise this with staff. I was not one of the commissioners who did, but I appreciate that some folks were proactive enough to tackle this. It speaks to one of the most challenging things that I think I've wrestled with on a lot of these approvals. I agree with Commissioner Heck that feels like it's sort of solidifying what we were doing already in some ways. I just appreciate sort of having it in writing, and I don't have to wonder, what's the bounds of what we're considering. It's hairy. These projects always are, especially with the prohibition on thinking about future use. But I definitely find myself thinking about plans and what the implications are for these sorts of approvals. So I think it's a helpful amendment in my view.
Any further input, comments? Seeing none, we will come to a vote. And I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Looping back now to agenda item 10, Legistar 81965, amending sections within chapter 28 of the Madison General Ordinances related to drive-through windows. And I believe we're going to hear from Katie Bannon on this one. Is that correct? Oh, Alder Field.
Chair, I'll defer to your preference, but I'm ready with a motion to refer whenever that's appropriate.
I don't see that as being inappropriate now unless I hear from Heather that should not take place now. Heather?
The only thing I would say is that we do have one registrant wishing to speak.
Okay.
And so it might make the most sense to do that after the public hearing.
Okay, perfect. I don't think then we really need the overview. We have one registrant wishing to speak. I'll open the public hearing and we will hear from that registrant and then loop back to Alderfield. Linda Leonards, you have 3 minutes.
Hi. Well, I had a number of things to say to further emphasize what I've already written, and particularly in my supplemental letter, but I will forego my opportunity and wait till it comes back again. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Linda was the only registrant. I will close the public hearing and move to Alder Field.
Thank you, Chair. So I wanted to move referral when a motion is appropriate, and I'll explain after I make the motion. So move to refer to a date not specified.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Duncan. Alder Field, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Briefly, yes. So this is a code change that I've been discussing with the other Alder sponsor, I believe is in the call, and with staff for a little bit. And we want to make sure, I think, or I'll speak for myself, I want to make sure that we're not having unintended consequences in making code changes. And so we got some really thoughtful public comments over the weekend about this item that I'd like to dig into in more detail with the other sponsor and with staff. So I think we should just take a little time and then see what we want to do and bring it back. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Alderfield. Heather.
Yes, I think the council often prefers to have a date, even if it's a date far out in the future. If there's a date that you could suggest for the referral, and I can pull up those dates if needed. I know there's an April 8th meeting, for instance, is about a month away. Or if you want something later, we could look at that too.
Tim, Oh, I thought I saw Tim Park's hand up. Alderfield.
Yeah, if I could propose or clarify or amend my motion to specify the 8th, that would be great.
Okay. That's fine. Okay. Any other discussion, comments, input? Okay, so it is to refer to April 8th. Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is agenda item 12, Legistar 81908, amending section 33.24 paren 15 paren E5A of the Madison General Ordinances related to urban design, landscaping, and open space to remove the minimum terrace width requirement from Urban Design District 8. Heather, are you speaking to that one or is Tim? Tim, it looks like. Okay,
Yes.
Tim, please go ahead.
Just briefly, Chair and Plan Commission members, the question before you under item 12 is a request to amend the Urban Design Commission code, which is chapter 33 or section 33.24 of MGO. In particular, a provision in Urban Design District 8 that we have found conflicts with the city's recently approved Complete Green Streets policy. The provision that's being removed from Urban Design District 8 is one that specifies that terraces, which is the area between the back of curb and the sidewalk edge, that those terraces be a minimum of 10 feet within Urban Design District 8. And what we have found is that provision conflicts with the recently adopted Complete Green Streets policy and guide, which was adopted in January 2023. And the implementation of that is ongoing. It's a more contemporary way of looking at the city's right-of-way design, including travel ways, flex spaces, which are defined in that policy as on-street parking lanes, the curb and gutter, and any terrace. Sidewalks are treated separately, and the actual travel way or travel lanes are treated separately. So the proposal 81908 is to remove that provision in UDD 8 and let the Complete Green Streets policy guide changes to the right-of-way in Urban Design District 8. That concludes the staff overview. I'm happy to answer questions after the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I will open the public hearing. The first registrant is Sandra Ward, West Mifflin Street, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Sandra, you have 3 minutes. Sandra, it looks like you're unmuted on our end, but we are not hearing you. Jesse?
Perhaps do you have a mute button on a headset or your microphone device? You are unmuted on our end. The next suggestion I have is to exit the meeting and return to it, and we'll see if we can see if your microphone works then.
Might it work better for her on using a phone, Jesse?
She left. Generally, like the next best thing is to return to the meeting, but if that does not work, then yeah, we could try phone.
Okay. While Sandra is trying to work out that bug with us, I'll move to Ann Walker, Winnebago Street, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Ann, you have 3 minutes. Jesse, is Ann unmuted on our end?
Just now.
Hello?
There you go.
Okay,
Oh,
Ann, I can
excellent.
hear you now. 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I live in a few blocks from East Washington, which in the Isthmus is a pretty easy thing to do, right? The Isthmus is a tiny strip of land bisected by East Washington. I'm not now on any neighborhood board or committee, but in the past I served on the neighborhood association board, various committees, including development, and I chaired the traffic committee for many years. So I am very aware of how development and transportation issues affect land use, especially in the Isthmus where there's so little available land. This proposal is one that has the potential to further deplete open space, green space, and complicate the ability to plant canopy trees inexpensively in the East Washington corridor. In an area where we hope to increase pedestrian traffic, this proposal would make it more difficult to accommodate features long associated with walkability and pedestrian scale. First, East Washington is an example of this problem. It's also a proposed design which minimizes the ability to plant canopy trees, passively cool the surrounding area, or meaningfully address stormwater. So in conclusion, this proposal makes it more difficult to incorporate good design principles as well as adequate resilience planning. So I do not support further eroding the terrace in the East Washington corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Our next registrant is Linda Leonards, South Patterson, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Linda, you have 3 minutes.
Hello. The drafters analysis talks about how this 10-foot terrace requirement is no longer needed because of complete green streets. I disagree. Under complete green streets, the terrace could be 4 feet in width. Canopy trees are only promoted in the high priority canopy area, which are areas with a canopy score and a tree equity score that averages down to a low score. Most of East Washington does not qualify as a high priority canopy area because the residential areas along the lakes are part of the score area. Yet one of the Capital Gateway Corridor Plan's 4 core development principles is to, quote, create an inviting, vibrant boulevard along East Washington Avenue. Considerable changes were made to the landscaping section of UDD number 8 during the Plan Commission approval process to help achieve that inviting, vibrant boulevard. Requiring a 10-foot terrace is certainly more restrictive than requiring a 4-foot terrace. Ordinances are replete with conflicts. These conflicts are not always removed. In fact, UDD number 8 recognizes that conflicts can occur. It states, quote, the applicable regulations of other codes shall continue to apply with full force and effect to all properties in the district. If this ordinance conflicts with other city regulations, however, the regulations which are more restrictive or which impose higher standards or requirements shall govern. Clearly, having a 10-foot terrace is more restrictive. The draft is and would be what should continue to happen. The drafter's analysis also said that the city's forester reviews items relating to tree planting and can address the correct width to support healthy tree growth. True in a way, I mean, the forester does look at the terrace width and decides what species of trees are appropriate. But the forester does not decide where canopy trees are appropriate and work backwards to determine the appropriate terrace width to support those canopy trees. The director's analysis does not claim that UDC lacks authority over the terrace width, but that's what the staff report for UDC told UDC. The supposed lack of authority was stressed in the UDC staff report, and UDC seemed to accept the assertion they lacked authority. For reasons explained in my written comments, I do not agree that UDC lacks authority. Those reasons being, first, that UDC has control over landscaping and open areas in order to promote the general welfare of the community. Second, that in 2007, UDC's proposed requirements and guidelines were significantly expanded during the Plan Commission review process. If UDC did not have authority to set the terrace width, that issue would have been raised during that extensive review process.
Thank you, Linda.
And I would also like to mention safe.
Concludes your available time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is Sandra Ward available? Heather, did you have something?
We do just have 2 other registrants after Sandra. I just wanted to let you know that, and I'm happy to read them when it's time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sandra, you have 3 minutes.
Sandra, it does not appear that we are still not hearing you, although you are unmuted on your side. I did send you an email with some instructions on how to join by phone and maybe troubleshoot with the microphone.
So Sandra, perhaps it would be best to try to join by phone. As Jesse indicated, he sent you information about that, and we will loop back to you then. Okay, go ahead, Heather.
Sure. The next registrant is Robert Kleba of East Gorham Street in opposition.
Bob, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, and staff. The 10-foot terrace in UDD 8 has proven to be an immense asset to our city. Almost 20 years ago, planning staff, alders, and neighbors met to define what we wanted to see in the East Capitol Gateway corridor. Coincidentally, my husband was in this group, which was formerly a city committee. At the time, the area was blighted. Few people even walked down East Washington Avenue, and it was not the most welcoming entrance to our downtown. Our 2008 Penny Lapham neighborhood plan was coordinated with what became UDD 8. Ironically, our neighborhood plan lacked vision when questioned whether anyone would even want to live on East Washington Avenue. That perspective has changed, and there is a reason for it. The East Capitol Gateway Committee came up with a comprehensive plan that encourages growth, respects our neighborhood, and would provide a spectacular thoroughfare that shows what Madison can be. This plan was adopted and became UDD 8 and has had few changes since its adoption 15 or so years ago. One of the fundamental visions of the original committee was the East Washington corridor should be an expansive avenue with a wide terrace, like what we have on West Washington Avenue. The 10-foot terrace requirement in UDD 8 does this. We now have a grand entrance to our downtown where a large tree canopy will soon benefit all of us. As we reconsider the Lake Monona waterfront, we need to keep in mind how successful the original UDD 8 code has been for placemaking on East Washington Avenue. Please do not allow any modification to the 10-foot requirement. I rely on the Planning Commission to keep and to enforce this requirement in UDD 8 so that we have a long-lasting boulevard we will all enjoy many years into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Heather, we've got another registrant.
Our last registered speaker is Mary Lang Solinger of East Washington Avenue in opposition.
Mary, you have 3 minutes. Jesse is
Chair, there's no person in attendance by that name.
okay. Then let's see if we can hear from Sandra Ward. Jesse, is she unmuted on our end? Jesse?
Sandra, you should be seeing a prompt to unmute. It might be behind another window. All right, Chair, I don't think that that it's currently working.
Okay. Then I guess we have to move on, absent Sandra and Mary's input. Are there questions of any of our registrants? Questions of any of our registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Tim, can you explain what is the purpose of this ordinance? I mean, are we not going to plant trees in there? It's not part of the Safe Street process. I'm confused about the feedback that we're getting on this regard.
So, no, in short, this doesn't mean that we are not going to plant trees in the Capitol Gateway corridor. It is intended to remove a conflict that's developed with the adoption of the Complete Green Streets policy and guide, which took a pretty granular look at how certain streets should be categorized, how those specific street types should be built out, talking about really actually, frankly, prioritizing to a certain extent green infrastructure, pedestrians and bicycles over streets that had historically been designed with automobiles first and foremost. And it was discovered, over the last year that there was one area where the 10-foot terrace wasn't being implemented, and that kind of shone a light on the fact that it's possible that that 10-foot provision was not being equally implemented up and down the East Washington corridor. And with the advent of Complete Green Streets and the identification of East Washington Avenue as an urban avenue in the Complete Green Streets typology, that it was recommended that the 10-foot terrace width in the urban design district be removed from the ordinance, and that the Complete Green Streets guide and policy would guide future changes to East Washington Avenue.
Thank you so much for that clarification. I appreciate it. I don't have any more questions at this time.
Thank you. Alder Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. So if I heard you right, Tim, I've got two questions. To clarify, there's already parts of East Washington that do not have the 10-foot terrace right now.
That is true.
Okay.
I can't specify exactly where, but it's, and perhaps Heather has more she can shine on that.
Heather.
Yeah, I think that's an important clarification here. I pulled up just an aerial view from the city's zoning map, and I just want to show a few spots so that folks can see what the existing terraces are, even within two of the sort of well-known redevelopments that have occurred. So here we have, this is the Galaxy project, and I just want to zoom in on the terrace. Here you see a tree planted in that terrace, but using just the measuring tool here, we can see that this terrace in front of the Galaxy project is about 8.3 feet. Now I'm going to clear that out and zoom down the street for just one more. I promise I won't do too many of these, but I just want to level, kind of level set and help us all understand what these widths actually are. So this, you can see here is Breese Stevens Field. So just beyond it is the Lyric building. And I'll just grab a measurement in front of the Lyric as well for reference, and then I will stop. So in front of the Lyric, we have a measurement of 6.3 feet. One other thing I want to stress before I leave this screen share is that in the East Washington Avenue Urban Design District 8, we do have a different requirement that would be staying and is very important for tree canopy, and that's a 15-foot building setback. And so the buildings that you see going up and continuing are set back 15 feet from the property line, and that allows ample space for very large canopy trees to be planted in the terrace, smaller trees to be planted even on the private property side. And so I did want to stress that, and again, just show a few examples so that folks have a better sense of the widths of the terraces as they've been constructed over time.
Thank you both. And then my second question was just to confirm that by removing this number 5 in the ordinance, it's not going to prevent us from having canopy trees on either the terrace or somewhere up and down East Washington Ave.
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. Some questions. I heard Heather say that the 15-foot building setback will remain. The question is, what will that 15 feet consist of, I guess? So you did say that, correct, Heather?
Yeah, so that 15-foot space between the property line and the building does have its own landscaping requirements. And there are opportunities for smaller trees to fit within that 15-foot space, but they're not the large canopy trees that would have adequate sort of crown space if they were planted in the terrace. The buildings are far enough back so that those trees can really grow to their full maturity. A wide variety of canopy tree types can thrive in that environment since the building is set back so many feet from the property line.
And
now, in some
the
cases,
property line, can you describe that again, Heather? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. The property line is usually the line between the line that ends on the inside of the sidewalk, roughly. Between that inside of the sidewalk to the building, give or take. And I do want to acknowledge that for very narrow terraces, there are sometimes engineering solutions underground to promote really healthy root growth of the trees. But the building setback, that 15-foot breathing area between the property line and the building face, provides that ample space for tree canopy that doesn't have to be cut in awkward shapes to avoid hitting the building over time. So that is, again, that's still something that's staying within Urban Design District 8 and really promotes that sort of opportunity for very large and diverse canopy trees to be part of the terrace in that area.
Thanks. And I just want to make sure now I have the geometry correct. Under complete green streets, they recommend 10 feet for the zone that includes the parking lane, if there is one, and the street terrace for, I forget what it's called, urban areas or whatever.
Flex zone.
Yeah, flex zone.
Yeah, Urban Avenue.
Urban Avenue, right.
Yeah.
So assuming there is a parking lane, then the terrace could maybe be as narrow as 4 feet. Then there's a recommended 6 or 8 foot sidewalk. And then there's 15 feet beyond that before you get to the building. That would be, I guess, the scenario where the terrace would be the most narrow if they did recommend the 10-foot zone. Is that, do I have that geometry correct? The terrace, the most narrow terrace would probably be 4 feet, assuming there's 6 feet in a parking lane.
Parking lane is going to be 7 or 8 feet.
7 or 8, so it could even be narrower than 4 feet potentially.
Yeah, and the parking is something that, where I want to clarify that we are still on in the early stages of implementing complete green streets. And so, all the particulars of how the actual right of way will be arranged, there's a lot of permutations, frankly. But what we have told other parties that were interested in on-street parking is that they needed to provide a bigger flex zone so that it isn't necessarily a trade-off between parking lane or terrace, that, we would be pushing for there to be a larger flex zone to accommodate a more maximal terrace, as well as the area needed for the on-street parking within the flex zone.
But those are casual conversations. They're not in the ordinance or in complete green streets.
Complete greens, correct. I guess versus trying to, peel back the onion too much right there, I would say that it would be a conversation. And in the case of something like East Washington Avenue, that would be a conversation that would likely occur at the Transportation Commission and the Board of Public Works, who would be reviewing any developer's agreement and plans for a specific development project along East Washington Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions for now.
I didn't hear an answer to Commissioner Heck's 15-foot description. Could you answer that? Where is the 15 feet from and to?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Oh.
The 15-foot building setback requirement is from the property line to the building face. Most frequently, that property line lies within the inner line of the public sidewalk.
Okay.
There's actually been a couple feet here and there as the UD, or Urban Design District 8 has redeveloped, but that's the most frequent location of that delineation between public and private property.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you, Commissioner Heck.
I would just note one of the pages I'm toggling between during this conversation is page 58 of the Complete Green Streets Guide, which for an urban avenue, which is the top row, a 15-foot flex zone is preferred per side. And if that were parking, that would be 7 or 8 feet of the 15 feet preferred. And then the rest would be the terrace. So, 4 feet would really be, I don't even know if that would be on-street parking in a 4-foot terrace. But that's something that, as I'm scrolling back and forth, I would say that that's a point of further clarification that needs to be made to Complete Green Streets.
So Tim, you're saying that 10 feet is the minimum of the flex zone and the minimum of a parking lane would be 8 feet?
7 or 8 feet, depending on.
2 feet for a terrace, presumably then.
If on-street parking was allowed with the very minimum 10-foot flex zone.
Okay, thank you. Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Chair. I don't even know where to begin with this, because let's just hear this. For 15 years, an ordinance was not being implemented. And you can say, well, now it conflicts with the Complete Green Streets. But, sure, we could have Heather go down the block and find all the cases where it did not meet 10 feet, which is an ordinance, it's not a policy. So, okay, now we've built the street not meeting this goal. And pretty much the majority of it, I would say, there's always going to be something that I'm not expecting to change, but the majority of what's clearly going to change has changed. And so there's a pattern now that it's 8 feet. And so, of course, that totally frustrates me as being, along with Bob Clubba's husband serve on that committee that came up with all this and then joined the council as the Urban Design 8 was just being implemented. But the question for me is, I mean, I don't even know if it matters if you delete it. No one follows the freaking rule anyway. So there's my cynical, please accept with grace my frustration here. But and I guess I agree with one of the registrants, Linda, saying I don't believe that the this complete green streets is more restrictive. I think it has a lot of more details on all the street typologies, and you can get really lost in the charts. But the urban design district ordinance in this section has at least 5 different things that talk about canopy trees explicitly. And what I'm hearing from Mr. Parks, you can't even guarantee a canopy tree on an urban avenue if there's a 7-foot parking lane. So clearly, and clearly this, when this goes back to the first year review by Transportation Commission, it will, I hope they will take this up and with some and go in and dive in. But the question for me now is like, well, who is in charge? If you're saying urban design isn't in charge, and is Plan Commission in charge? You could say, for example, that the project where this became sort of clear was 702 East Washington, where there in the staff report was a recommendation from traffic engineering, Sean Malloy, that the terrace would be 8 feet, maintenance area would be 1 feet, and the sidewalk would be 6 feet, which is 15 feet. Didn't count parking lane. But so is Sean Malloy in charge of who designs the right of way? Because I don't know who's in charge. I don't think I've ever seen it go to a design for this, for the right of way, go to anything like Transportation Commission or Board of Public Works. I mean, please let me know if I'm wrong. And I just really think this is one of those things that everyone thought somebody else was taking care of it. I thought staff was taking care of this and didn't really dive in myself. So I feel some responsibility for not noticing this. And I thank the chair of the Plan Commission for bringing this forward. But I guess for me, there's these bigger questions of, you know, who is in charge? Who helps design the right of way? When do you decide that it should be bigger or smaller on these different street typologies? Who reviews that? I don't think anybody does. So that's my alarm here. I'm trying to share with you and my frustration. And I did come back up with all those like words from back in the day that seem so appropriate, like this was flabbergasting me and I've been gobsmacked and just shocked that we have an ordinance that was never enforced. And I just don't hear anyone acknowledging that. And, you know, maybe you could move on past that if, you know, Tim sort of suggested that it wasn't being implemented, not equally implemented. It wasn't implemented. Which development has a 10-foot terrace per our ordinance? I don't believe any do. Anyway, and I don't mean to yell at you all. I'm just really frustrated. So when you say, oh, let's just delete it, like, I guess, but you know, we still want canopy trees. And then you're going to send a message to the public because all the letters you've received are like, what are you doing? You're like, you know, you're throwing the trees under the bus. That's what it feels like to the public that sort of pays attention to this in my world. So I do think I had questions in there. So I appreciate, I could repeat them because I did write a note to myself what they were, but I will stop.
So my understanding is your question is who designs and if there is an ordinance requiring something like the terrace width, who is responsible for making sure that ordinance is followed? Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know whether Tim or Heather.
Sure, I'll start, and I want to acknowledge the frustration. I think we as staff were also surprised to see this piece of the ordinance. We, as you can imagine, in Urban Design District 8, there are about 50 to 85 different requirements that we're looking at, and usually we're working with the development teams to to make sure that all of them are being met. The vast majority of those appropriately are on the private property. This is one that, when the ordinance was passed, was perhaps less appropriate. It was in the public right of way, which is ultimately under the purview of the city's Board of Public Works and the council. And so I think it was really well intentioned, and admittedly, as we've acknowledged in previous meetings, not followed as the Urban Design District 8 or Capital Gateway Corridor redeveloped over time. So it was missed. We want to be really forthright about that. And you can see in the measurements there, the existing terraces do range from, I'd say, 6 to 10 feet along the corridor at this point. So ultimately, in the public right of way, the Board of Public Works and the council have had the ultimate sort of oversight in street design. But now, with Complete Green Streets, the Transportation Commission also has oversight of that policy and how it lays out. I think, we don't want to continue with an ordinance that A, hasn't been followed over time, and B, isn't appropriately it isn't in the appropriate place. It's not in an ordinance under the appropriate board, committee, or commission that should ultimately be advising the council on any changes therein. The Urban Design Commission really does focus on what happens on the private property for the most part. So yeah, I want to acknowledge your frustration. It's totally valid. Staff had the same internal frustration and a little bit of bewilderment when we realized how varied the terrace widths were along the way. But trust that we've been looking at many other details as Urban Design District 8 has continued to redevelop over time. And I think that at this point moving forward, given the passage of Complete Green Streets, it is an appropriate time to pull this out of the of Chapter 33 or the Urban Design District 8 ordinance.
Thank you, Heather. Are there further questions?
I have a follow-up, Chair.
Thank you.
So I serve on Urban Design Commission, and we're about to start reviewing all the Urban Design District ordinance. I mean, as I stated earlier, this hasn't even been applied. I get how it maybe shouldn't be there, but it's almost like a moot point, taking this out. And also the question is like, why can we just wait and let us take it up through the whole process of the review of the urban design districts? It's not like there's some project that's in the queue waiting to, maybe have to fight over whether they should do 4 to 8 to whatever feet.
I don't think there's a real sense of urgency with this. No, I think this was something that we recognized and thought was best to get cleaned up sooner rather than later. But there's not, it's not being driven by anything terribly urgent. It would continue to perhaps have an atmosphere of confusion moving forward if it remains in the ordinance but is not being followed. So I want to acknowledge that.
Did you have another further follow-up, Alder Rubble?
Yeah, I guess and maybe it's not your wheelhouse here in the planning division, and maybe it's transportation that will take it up, but I just really want to really restate how important it is that if we're going to have canopy trees on these major avenues, it doesn't appear that we have enough space for that. And I just wanted to call that out. And I believe Commissioner McCahill is on transportation. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I hope that you will bring this back as something that needs a lot more work, and I would appreciate that.
Thank you. I don't see any raised hands. I do have a question. Am I correct that there really isn't anything to prevent the terrace from only being 2 feet wide? Is that accurate?
I would say that the answer technically cannot be no, but I think realistically, the terrace is going to be wider than 2 feet because again, the minimum would be 10 for an urban avenue. And you'd only get 2 if 8 of the 10 was dedicated to a parking lane. And I can't say that that can't not happen because technically the numbers work out. I don't think practically that's what would happen under Complete Green Streets. But I think it may be fair to say that there are some additional things that need to get flushed out with Complete Green Streets to make it clearer. Like, for example, there's a section in Complete Green Streets about tree canopy, and it talks about minimum 10-foot terrace width, preferred 15-foot terrace widths for urban avenues. But then it has a note that it's only for high priority areas, but it doesn't necessarily completely flush out what areas are high or medium or low, or how that applies, and whether the policy would be better, for example, to just say for urban avenues, the terrace will be a minimum of X feet. So that this question could be eliminated, or possibly to separate, terrace from parking, whereas right now it's all lumped into the flex zone.
Right.
And so these are notes that, the Transportation Commission is supposed to be taking a look at Complete Green Streets on an annual, we'll say regular basis. There is a staff group that is working to kind of make implementation of Complete Green Streets a little more intuitive, a little clearer. And so that's something that I think as we continue to begin to work more on implementation of Complete Green Streets, taking it from policy to projects, that's something that we can, continue to revisit, and we can signal to the Transportation Commission and the Common Council to the extent that we can, that the Plan Commission would like to be involved in future reviews of Complete Green Streets in some form or another. It's a policy. It was enabled when it was adopted to be Transportation Commissions to review and update, that it wouldn't necessarily be coming to the council as like a resolution that would then be referred to other boards, committees, and commissions, and then ultimately adopted by the Common Council. Transportation Commission kind of holds the ball for Complete Green Streets, but certainly we can, pass along the Plan Commission's concerns or questions, however you would care to characterize those.
And I do, thank you, Tim. I do have a follow-up concern and question. So this, what we're talking about right now in UDDA was an ordinance. And presumably ordinances have a certain impact. What you're talking about with Complete Green Streets is a policy. And so how would that really, what kind of impact would that really have, or need to be followed? I guess I'm saying I'm more comfortable with an ordinance, but this ordinance wasn't followed. What do we have to help be sure that as a city that this Complete Green Streets not only evolves in a way that we want to see it evolve as a city, but that it is followed?
Well, it started out as a policy. It is a policy document that resides adjacent to, if you will, MGO, Madison General Ordinances. But it was codified by reference when we updated the subdivision regulations last year. So that informs, and it was decided at that time to not bring Complete Green Streets into section 16.23, because then as the policy changes, we wouldn't necessarily have to then, shift and do an ordinance amendment, but that the street types in Complete Green Streets were included by reference and in the definitions in the subdivision regulations. And we've already had, I'd say, almost a half dozen preliminary plats that have come through since last August 1st that have been subjected to Complete Green Streets. So from that perspective, we are using our subdivision approval process to implement Complete Green Streets. Less clear are projects that don't involve subdivision or land division. And we talked earlier today about how we have street reconstructions for 2024 and beyond that are going to be informed by the Complete Green Streets policy. But those plans are ultimately approved by the Common Council following recommendations by the Board of Public Works and the Transportation Commission. And in that case, Complete Green Streets is a guide. It's like one of our area plans or neighborhood development plans are guides. They're not ordinance. They're not fiat. That in those cases, we're using Complete Green Streets to shape how those reconstructed streets look.
Thank you, Tim. That was helpful. Commissioner McCahill.
Thanks. I don't have a question, but I felt like it might be helpful to weigh in my perspective on Transportation Commission. That's helpful.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So I appreciate Alderama's frustration on how the current UDD standards have been implemented. This does feel like sort of the natural fix to those types of problems to me. I might be biased towards the Complete Green Streets policy because I was involved in it for a long time. But what it does is it gives engineering and public works one place to look for, what standards they're supposed to be meeting. Like the current policy isn't perfect, but the idea is to tweak it, as these issues come up. And I think having that document in one place makes that helpful rather than, having to look at neighborhood plans, having to look at urban design standards. And that's, I think, how we're trying to move as a city in resolving some of these problems with, piecemeal policies that everyone's trying to follow. The current situation where this design standard might conflict with Complete Green Streets, in my experience, the way that would play out is then Transportation Commission or engineering would come to Transportation Commission and say, we've got these conflicting standards. We have to veer from Complete Green Streets. We need your approval. And we'd work through that at Transportation Commission. That happened when we realized the subdivision ordinance conflicted with Complete Green Streets. So if it's at all helpful, that's my perspective on how this would play out and how I think this is probably the helpful move.
Thank you, Chris. I think that helps answer some questions that have been raised. Commissioner Heck.
Just a quick question for Tim. Tim, I noticed in the staff report, the word that is used for our consideration is advisory. So no matter what Plan Commission has to say about this proposed change, it's still going to council, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Chair. I guess would like some clarification from staff about the role of the Plan Commission. So I referenced that example from 702 East Washington, where under the traffic engineering report from staff person Sean Malloy, one of the two conditions was the width of the terrace, the maintenance area, and the sidewalk. So this is a conditional use, so thus you see it. So then what? I mean, is it at all appropriate for the Plan Commission to take a look at this, or is this just something it's just like a pass-through thing, and this is where it shows up? Because at some point, okay, I don't think that any development project goes to Transportation Commission to look at the design of the right-of-way, and I don't believe it goes to, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe it goes to Board of Public Works. So who who looks at this? Is this just, I mean, who gets to decide that it's 8 feet versus 6 feet versus 4 feet? Is that just TE staff, or like, what's the process now then going forward?
Well, again, as Heather Stouter emphasized earlier, this 10-foot provision is something that has been missed. And the 8 feet was a more typical terrace width. So the number that was being provided by Sean Malloy, who is one of the staff engineers in the traffic engineering division, who typically reviews projects for transportation impacts, was going based on the more traditional non-UDD 8 guidance that there would be at least an 8-foot terrace, a 5-foot sidewalk, and then a 1-foot buffer zone on the property side of the public sidewalk. So if the Plan Commission were so inclined, the Plan Commission could have said a 10-foot terrace. Now, I wouldn't submit that willy-nilly, or that it wouldn't have impacts on a project which might be anticipating, one terrace width versus a bigger terrace width. But it's not just because Sean said it, it must be abided by the Plan Commission. But again, there is also always been somewhat tenuous relationship between zoning approvals, which are in the Plan Commission's purview when we're talking about conditional uses, and the public right-of-way adjacent to them. And we frequently see conditions of approval that are related to conditional uses like 702 East Washington Avenue, where the Plan Commission is approving the project adjacent to the public right-of-way, subject to a condition that they themselves are not entitled or enabled by ordinance to enforce. And so how that reconstructed right-of-way would be implemented would be the plans and specifications that would accompany a developer's agreement that would be driven off of a conditional use approval, like for a project at 702, where there would be a condition where the developer enter into an agreement with the city to construct the infrastructure improvements needed to serve their project, which includes reconstructing the public right-of-way, changes to the street, relocating a sidewalk, specifying a terrace width, but those are always reviewed by the Board of Public Works at their meeting. You typically will see items on their agenda related to private development agreements. That is where the information, the plans, what the developer is going to do in the public right-of-way adjacent to their project, but it's a separate but related legislative question. In the case of a conditional use, that land use question is going to stop at the Plan Commission, but as it relates to the infrastructure improvements to serve that conditional use project, that's ultimately going to go to the Common Council after a stop at the Board of Public Works. To your point, though, Alder, not many, maybe not any public improvements related to a specific development site go through the Transportation Commission. But if there is a developer's agreement, that developer's agreement is reviewed by the Board of Public Works before it's approved by the Common Council.
Thank you, Tim.
So just because we are at Plan Commission, to confirm, Plan Commission would not have the authority to say, no, we don't like that 8-foot terrace. It has to be 15 feet, for example.
You can, that's I would say that you could recommend a greater terrace dimension, but whether you could enforce it, that's the question, because there is a departure, and there even historically have been comments from the city engineering division that have ended up in staff reports, not in recent years, but going back 5 or 6 years, there was frequently a standard comment from the city engineering division that was almost kind of like a heads up, well, fairly taciturn heads up to the Plan Commission that the approval of changes to the right of way are the Board of Public Works purview. But kind of related to sort of a quick, hopefully quick, related aside, part of the reason why some of these conditions about terrace width and sidewalks and things like that started coming up was there was a point in time about 25 years ago where you could have an entire nearly block wide redevelopment like Block 51, West Wash, Broome, West Main Street on the other side of downtown. That project was a planned unit development. It had 13 conditions of approval. Because back in those days, the default was everything in Madison general ordinances you had to do as a developer, whether it was said in a plan commission staff report or not. And there were folks who were kind of rubbed the wrong way by finding out during the sign-off process after the plan commission that no, you have to comply with stormwater management. You need to give us a wider sidewalk. Your sewer connection is here instead of there, or all these things that were just written out in Madison general ordinances. And so the pendulum has swung the other way since. And now we put everything in there, whether it's something that the plan commission can do something with or not. And generally recalling for the members too, that in our staff reports, if it's in a gray box, often, not always, but often those are the conditions that may be adjustable by the plan commission as part of its action on whatever that question is. But the items that are just general ordinance requirements are not in that major non-standard umbrella, that gray box in those staff reports. Those are sort of wrote by Madison general ordinances, but they're in that in those conditions of approval so that the readers understand what the project will have to do in order for it to be built. And while the primary audience is members of the Plan Commission and the applicants, I mean, it's also frequently useful for members of the public who want to understand that, oh, they have to comply with MGO 37, which is erosion control and stormwater management. And so they may be more concerned about a project than they see, oh, well, they're going to comply with these things, so maybe I'm not concerned. So all of them have ended up in the bin for the last 25 years, but only some of them are really malleable by the Plan Commission.
Thank you, Tim. That I think was also very helpful. Are there further questions of staff? Seeing no raised hand, is there a motion? Alder Duncan.
I move to recommend to Common Council approval of amending section 33.2415E 5.A of the Madison General Ordinance related to urban design, landscaping, and open space to remove the minimal terrace width requirement with urban design district number 8.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Mendez. Alder Duncan, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. One of the concerns that I had coming into this after reviewing the recommended change was, first, if this was being followed across this area already, and learning from staff, this is not an ordinance that is being followed. And so from my standpoint, I think that if we're going to have an ordinance in place, then we need to actually be following it. So removing this, it's really not going to do anything because we already are not following this ordinance. The second concern that I had was just around whether or not canopy trees would be on East Washington if we were to remove this section that talks about accommodating growth of canopy trees. And listening to staff, they've said that by removing this, we will still be able to have canopy trees on the terrace. And if not on the terrace, under the UDD 8's different requirement of that 15-foot setback, there may also be able to have canopy trees on the other side. So those two confirmations really allowed me to feel comfortable with being able to move forward with passing this.
Thank you, Alder Duncan. Are there further comments, input? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. First, I wanted to recognize and sympathize with the frustration of Alder Rummel that she expressed. There are 3 current or former alders in this meeting who were alders or are alders of this area, and we didn't realize this ordinance wasn't being followed. And the many folks who live in this area that we hear in public comment quite often also were not aware until this concern came up with regard to 702 East Wash. In the course of this discussion, I've been convinced that recommending to council that they pass this is really going to just continue the status quo, assuming that Transportation Commission will, in the near future, look over green streets and that this type of situation will be addressed. I was thinking maybe take a word from the Capital Gateway Plan. Maybe there are gateway streets also, as in addition to priority streets or something like that, where you can make accommodations in ordinance for a little wider terrace. But I really think passing this continues the status quo, and East Wash is a successful urban design district, UDD 8, maybe in particular because of the 15-foot setback that we talked about on the property side. But I think that staff and neighbors and alders will look out to make sure we don't end up with a 2-foot terrace in the worst case scenario until complete Green Streets is updated. So I'll be voting yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank Commissioner oh my goodness, I can't even see your name. McHale, whatever. Chris and staff for clarifying the points regarding the subdivision ordinance and the state streets, which play a direct role on requesting this change to be made. An issue was presented, and I couldn't understand why the discrepancy. Why did we have that discrepancy when we just went through so much trouble to get the subdivision ordinance changed, to make exactly what it was explained on this meeting, a consistent path to getting the rules and recommendations that council approve on that policy. So to me, it is common sense to follow, try to follow the same path as often as possible. And this is just an opportunity to have that consistency. So I appreciate the input on that regard, and I will definitely be supporting this change. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? I would just like to say that Commissioner McCahill, thank you for speaking up, and I look forward to the work, further work on complete green streets, so we can make sure that they're green. So thank you. Okay, seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I do really appreciate the good overall discussion by commissioners and the responsiveness of staff to something that really is kind of a complicated situation right now. So thank you. The next item is agenda item 13, Legistar 81560, approving a certified survey map of property owned by 1908 Arlington Place LLC, located at 1908 Arlington Place, University Heights Historic District, Alder District, number 5. And I think we're going to hear from Tim again.
Yes, Chair. Once again, Tim Parks with planning staff. Just briefly, the request before the Plan Commission is to divide 1908 Arlington Place into 2 lots, currently an approximately quarter-acre parcel with a single-family residence located on the western portion of the property. The applicant is requesting approval to divide the site to create an approximately 4,400 square foot lot that will be approximately 44 feet wide along Arlington Place. The property is zoned TRC2, which is a single family residential district that requires 4,000 square feet of lot area minimum per lot, as well as 40 feet of lot width. Staff has reviewed the request and believes that the proposed lots will comply with the TRC2 zoning and that that the lots comply with the standards and criteria for land divisions in section 16.23, the subdivision regulations. I will note that the Landmarks Commission granted a certificate of appropriateness for the land division at its February 12th meeting, but that decision has been appealed to the Common Council. The Common Council is scheduled to review both Resolution ID 81560, which is the land division that the Plan Commission is considering tonight, as well as the appeal of the Landmarks Commission decision to grant a certificate of appropriateness at next Tuesday's Common Council meeting, March 19th. But in conclusion, staff is recommending that the Plan Commission approve the certified survey map subject to input at the public hearing and comments and condition from reviewing agencies that are contained in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I will open the public hearing. The first registrant is Jean Helferty, Arlington Place, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Jean, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay. Thank you very much. I wanted to begin by saying that my husband and I fully support our neighbor Lester Pine's proposal that this committee only conditionally approve the certified survey map for 1908 Arlington Place. You'll be hearing from Lester, and you did receive his information, so I won't speak to any of that. What I can say is there were considerable number of inconsistencies and confusion that played a role in the Landmark Commission's decision. Outside of a desire for, I guess, a developer to divide the property as quickly as possible to get it on the market and make a quick profit, it seems to me it would be hard for me to understand how approving this prior to the merits of the appeal being reviewed by the City Council would benefit anyone else, including the City of Madison. What I'm guessing will happen is if this isn't fully resolved, this same issue will, concerning the Landmarks Commission's haste to approve these requests, and inconsistencies will continue to clog your commissions and most likely the courts, wasting valuable time that could probably be spent moving Madison forward. For my email to you, my husband and I listened after the meeting that we attended to the committee meeting of February 12th. And we wrote down all of the inconsistencies that we noticed along with the times, and you have that. To highlight some of them, Dr. Bailey began by stating that the definition that had to be used of adjacent was sharing a lot line. She later cited this sharing a lot line definition in MGO 28.144. In that section, there is no definition of adjacent. It does use the word adjoining, but that definition applies only to development on a property that adjoins a landmark or landmarked site. 1908 Arlington is neither, and that was pointed out in the meeting. In the definition section of MGO 28.2.111, the word adjacent isn't defined. So we're not sure if that sharing a lot line was Dr. Bailey's definition. Was that the city attorney's definition? Where did that definition come from that she said the commission was required to follow? Following that, Dr. Bailey throughout the meeting ignored her own required definition of adjacent and allowed the commission members to discuss properties located throughout University Heights as comparables. At one point, when discussing which lots should be considered, Dr. Bailey used the marked up map that the buyer had submitted with their application. The only difference being the one that Dr. Bailey showed the commission during the meeting also had the city of Madison seal. I'm not sure if that is a common practice. This map, again, went directly against Dr. Bailey's definition of adjacent, and we were confused, but it's clear the commission members felt that that map was what they were required to follow. Finally, we also went back and read the original submission by the buyer. One of the requirements on that submission was photographs, and that box was in fact checked that it was provided. There were no photos shown at the meeting, and when Alder Latimer Burns asked if
Thank
there
you,
were—
Jean. That does conclude your available 3 minutes. The next registrant is Monica Messina, Kendall Avenue, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Monica, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. So also, I want to be clear that I speak in support of the request to conditionally approve the certified surveyor map of 1908 Arlington Place Division, since there is this petition that Attorney Pines will speak to for the Common Council regarding the landmarks February 12th approval, because as the petition states, landmarks did not comply with the ordinance MGO 41.18. In my submitted letter, the Messina letter, I have maps that provide important visuals. So I would ask members to refer especially to figures 4 and 5 in my letter, the Messina letter, or pull those up for viewing now if you wish. Specifically, my maps are addressing point number 5 in the petition about how landmarks failed to determine before the hearing the general pattern of lot sizes in University Heights and did not present any maps with numerical dimensions. So 2 concerns I'm going to bring up. Concern 1, arbitrary map selection. The 1908 Arlington Place LLC, hereafter termed LLC, submitted a Sanborn fire insurance map and claimed that lot lines on that specific map proved the intent of a proposed land division. However, Sanborn maps are not surveyor maps. Instead, my letter shows there are surveyor maps that show otherwise. A full lot is platted between 1908 and 1902 Arlington Place. Those 2 large homes were the very first homes in Block 9 in years 1902 and 1903, and in fact, their platting and their siting set the precedent for the next homes built in 1904 through 1909, where replatting took place. 5 lots were reduced to 3 to create lawns proportional to those large homes. Concern number 2. 2 is comparison of lot sizes. Here's how the National Historic Register describes University Heights, quote, "Construction on this hilltop neighborhood began in 1894. Large impressive homes were clustered just below the summit, while smaller houses were built in the northern portion of the development," end quote. Per the register, the lots on Arlington are larger, ranging from a maximum of around 13,000 square feet to a minimum of 6,200. On Kendall, the north portion, smaller lots appear, maximum 5,900 to minimum 4,800. The proposed land division by the LLC says the new lots are comparable to lots in Block 9. The claim is false. It's false because the new lot to the east of 1908 Arlington is just shy of 4,500 square feet, which is the very smallest lot of the entire block. In conclusion, Landmark staff filed a report recommending a certificate of appropriateness for the land division by referencing only the documents submitted by the LLC. However, the LLC made a false comparison and used maps of convenience that misrepresent the actual historic development and character of Block 9 in University Heights. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Monica. Our next registrant is Lester Pines, Arlington Place, Madison, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak. Lester, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I want to make clear to the Plan Commission that the appeal of the Landmarks Commission decision is not a trifle. There are serious legal issues that are raised by the inappropriate definition of the word adjacent, which caused that commission to not follow Madison General Ordinance 4118 sub 4, which requires a two-step process for that commission to follow. It didn't follow it, and we intend to make a very vigorous appeal to the Common Council. One thing that I want to avoid, and I hope that your commission will avoid, is to give an imprimatur of approval of the Landmarks Commission's decision by without any conditions saying that this certified survey map enshrining the proposed division should be approved. The statute which governs your obligations under the Wisconsin statutes allows this commission to approve conditionally a certified survey. That's what our request is. That will communicate to the Common Council that it needs to take seriously the considerations of this appeal, and not to imply in any way that the Plan Commission has agreed with the Landmarks Commission. The Plan Commission generally is just engaging in a ministerial activity of approving certified survey maps, but they cannot do that in this case. There is right now no approval by the Landmarks Commission that is legally enforceable and binding. In my March 7th letter, I proposed language for a motion for this committee, and I'm asking one of the members of the committee to please move that the certified survey map be conditionally approved, which is consistent with 23634 1MF, and that conditional approval would be within the 90 days that's required, and it would be conditional on this matter being heard by the Common Council and ultimately decided by the Common Council, which might refer it back to the Landmarks Commission, and that this approval won't take effect until the Landmarks Commission may again review this with using the proper legal authority and elements that it's supposed to. This is not a NIMBY thing. This is not people who don't want development. This is people who for decades have followed the Landmarks Commission rules and regulations with our homes, and we want the Landmarks Commission to be forced to follow its obligations under the law. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lester. Our next registrant is Brian Reber, Arlington Place, Madison, in support and wishing to speak. Brian, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Brian Reber. I support this proposal. I own and reside at 1908 Arlington Place. I'm also a local restaurant owner. I run Wings Over Madison just around the corner on University Avenue. I am applying to divide the eastern yard from the existing home, with both proposed lots meeting zoning requirements. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Are there questions of any of our registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if staff can give direction to the commission and to the public on what is the ask for this body tonight.
The question of whether to divide 1908 Arlington Place into 2 lots was referred to the Plan Commission as allowed by the subdivision regulations. So the question is whether the requirements in section 16.23, the subdivision regulations, and the zoning code, because the zoning of the property and the minimum lot width, lot area, setbacks for existing structures for a land division have to be met. So first and foremost, does the certified survey map comply with the subdivision regulations, and related to that, or informed by that, is whether the proposed lots will comply with TRC2 zoning. And again, staff's recommendation is that the subdivision regulations, standards, and criteria can be met. And that includes that the proposed lots are compliant with TRC2 zoning.
Thank you, Tim. Is the word adjacent or that ordinance that incorporates that language part of the discussion or the purview of Plan Commission?
I do not believe so.
And have there been any CSMs on the area recently or in the past few years for this particular district, historic district?
There was a land division approved on, I believe, Chadburn Avenue, 2020 Chadburn Avenue.
Can
That
you
was
show that on the map, please? As a point of reference?
if you give me one quick
Yes.
second.
Yes, sir. You take your time.
I will note, I don't know if the that certified survey map has been recorded yet. Yeah, let's see. This is the property with the dot is 2020 Chadburn, and it does in fact appear that the certified survey map dividing that parcel into 2 lots has been approved. You will note reference to certified survey map. Of course, it just disappeared. How handy. 16406. And this number 1 and this number 2, that signifies lots 1 and lot 2 of this certified survey map, which created a 40-foot wide, 4,800 square foot lot in the University Heights district, a few blocks away from the property that we're discussing tonight, which is right here. Oops. So 1908 Arlington is this parcel here, and they're looking to redivide this parcel. And it would be a similar lot to the one that went through the Landmarks Commission and was administratively approved by the Secretary of the Plan Commission and recently recorded.
And then finally, when it comes to the recommendation that we're making tonight, it's part of the rules that this goes to council for final approval. It's not this body that approves, we just recommend.
Yes, in this case, the Common Council has to adopt a resolution approving the certified survey map, accepting any dedications related to the land division, park impact fees, things, basically accepting the conditions of approval that you see in the staff report.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate your help. That's all I got for now.
Any other questions of staff? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. Tim, do you see any harm in our adding the 2 conditions of approval that were suggested by Mr. Pines in his email to us?
Well, maybe and definitely would be my answers, and I'll explain as quickly as I can. We have, as a city, 90 days to act on the certified survey map that was submitted by 1908 Arlington Place LLC. And that includes decisions related to the Landmarks Commission certificate of appropriateness. And so, and let me just, I believe here they are, the conditions that are in the Pines letter. The first one is basically saying that the Plan Commission and Common Council's approval would not be effective until the Common Council decides on the appeal filed related to the certificate of appropriateness. This one is maybe okay. It's a little redundant because the subdivision regulations imply that if it's a land division of a property in a historic district or of a local landmark parcel, that the approval of the Landmarks Commission is required. But this one, up at least until this point, where I have it highlighted, is probably okay or in bounds for the Plan Commission. However, the second one at the top of page 2 might suggest that we're going to go beyond the 90 days that were afforded under the statutes to act on the certified survey map. As noted in the staff report, as noted in Mr. Pine's letter, we have 90 days from the submittal of a completed application to approve, conditionally approve, or reject the certified survey map. And so the second condition suggests that if the Common Council would pass the question back to the Landmarks Commission, who would not meet next until April 15th at the earliest, that we would then potentially be running afoul of that 90-day limit. So I would say that the second condition is, potentially going to run us afoul of that. I believe it's noted in the staff report, but 90 days from the January 8th submittal deadline is April 7th. And so the city has to, in its entirety, the Common Council, the Landmarks Commission, the Plan Commission has to have approved, conditionally approved, or rejected the certified survey map to divide 1908 Arlington Place. And if we fail to do so, then it's deemed approved under statute, and then the lots get created anyway without any conditions. And so we would like to operate within the 90-day time frame that we're afforded.
Thank you.
Are there further questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, I'm looking for a motion. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I move to recommend to the council to adopt the certified survey map of property owned in 1908 Arlington Place, LLC, located at 1908 Arlington Place, University Heights, Historic District, in District 5.
Seconded by Alder Field. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Alder Figueroa Cole?
I think my questions to staff kind of answers my decision making here, so I don't really want to add anything at this moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alder Field.
Thank you, Chair. So the concerns about the Landmarks Commission hearing or that committee's process are going to be taken up at Common Council, but we're not reviewing that decision about the certificate of appropriateness or about those standards that they use or the evidence that they use to compare to the standards. Since this is a certified survey map, we're talking about the city's subdivision regulations. And so the staff report in its analysis noted that the size, the shape, and the orientation of the proposed lots are appropriate for this location. They meet the lot design requirements in the subdivision regulations, and they conform to the minimum requirements in the zoning code. Staff's analysis notes that the lot division does not conflict with any neighboring or neighborhood or area plans. And finally, we can see that there's precedence for a lot division like this elsewhere in this very neighborhood. So for those reasons, I will support this motion.
Thank you, Alder. Commissioner Heck.
Yes, I'd like to offer an amendment to the motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to include the first condition of approval that Mr. Pines included in his communication, less the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. I can read that if that's necessary.
I don't think it is. Everybody saw it, so.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I would like to, can you please read that? Because what
I
is the
can,
reason?
yeah.
Okay,
The-
then go ahead.
Yeah,
Read
thank
it.
you.
The approval of the proposed 1908 CSM shall not be effective until after the consideration of the February 21, 2024 appeal of the Landmarks Commission's approval of a certificate of appropriateness for a land division at 1908 Arlington Place in the University Heights District. The February 21 appeal in parentheses by the Madison Common Council, and the certificate of appropriateness is approved by the council. So in my mind, if I can speak to my amendment, or maybe I'll wait till I
Well,
get a,
we need to get a second.
yeah.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Commissioner Mendez. Commissioner Heck, go ahead, please, and speak to your motion.
Thank you. If this, the effect of adding this condition is that if council should not grant the appeal, there is no effect. Then there is no other city process other than appealing to the courts. I think that the appealers could take. So, but if they do grant the appeal, then that's a whole nother matter. But I think this amendment has it's kind of no harm, no foul, in my opinion. It's analogous to situations where CSMs in a replatting, say in a more exterior area of the city, that we decided not to approve a CSM or to approve it, and it really had no impact because there was some greater problem further down the line. And we would even go ahead and just approve them as the original motion would suggest. But in those situations, it was often the case that the property owner or the developer would not pursue the CSM because that they realized to further their plans, they needed to change some other things about their replatting or whatever they were doing. In this situation, it's just a tiny little lot. And I think that not having the CSM on record will be helpful if they do win their appeal. I'm not judging whether they should or they shouldn't. I'm just saying that it's a little cleaner, I think, if we do add this condition of approval. It's not harmful.
Thank you. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I got a little bit lost there on what we're trying to accomplish here, but can I ask a question from staff?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So the council approves, if the council approves the CSM, does the person gets the certificate immediately, or is there a time period before that happens? Or, we had a recent very similar thing happening a few months ago. Didn't we approve the CSM and then there was an appeal? I mean, how does that work in real life?
Tim?
Let me see if I can try to unpack that. So there's going to be two questions before the Common Council next Tuesday night. And I can't say exactly which one will come up in what order. It would be my hope that the appeal would be heard by the Common Council first and decided one way or the other at that meeting, whether they are going to uphold or overturn the Landmarks Commission decision on the certificate of appropriateness, so that, if the certificate of appropriateness is upheld, then the Plan Commission can then, or I'm sorry, the Common Council can then move to 81560, which is this question tonight, the resolution approving the certified survey map, and then approve it too and then the certificate of appropriateness is approved fully and fully affirmed versus there's or I'm sorry, certificate of appropriateness approved, Landmarks Commission decision upheld, then the 81560 can also be approved. And then coming out of next Tuesday night's meeting, the resolution would be to appeal the city's approval of the certified survey map to circuit court. That is the avenue for appealing beyond the city approvals that are before the council next Tuesday. Does that answer the question?
Somewhat. And also, again, to last question, this is just a recommendation to council. The council can approve whatever at the end of the day, correct? We're
Yes.
making a recommendation with a condition, but the council doesn't have to accept the condition. If the conditions do.
The final city approvals for this question, both the certificate of appropriateness and the question of approving the land division under 16.23 rest with the Common Council.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we go back to the motion, which is to approve the CSM. And with the amendment is what we're considering right now, which is to add the paragraph as shown on the screen and as read by Commissioner Heck. So it's the amendment that we will be voting on. Is there further discussion of the amendment? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote on the amendment only. And I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. There is one raised hand to object. Alder Figueroa Cole votes nay on that. Are there any other negative votes? Motion passes with one negative vote, Alder Figueroa Cole. That adds the amendment to the main motion, and we will return to the main motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote as amended. And I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, then moving on. Is there any business by members? Seeing no raised hands, we will move to the secretary's report. Heather.
Thank you, Chair Zellers. Recent Common Council actions. The council did pass the changes to the description of underground and site parking requirements, subject to the Plan Commission recommendation. And looking forward to our March 25th meeting, I'll just mention the first item there on the list. The Plan Commission can take a look at the Lake Monona Waterfront Master Plan, make a recommendation for adoption. I will mention that several items that were intended to be scheduled for tonight will be referred to March 25th as well, including the Commission's something that came to you several months back, demolition and redevelopment on the 400 block of State Street. And then moving forward to April 8th, I don't think there's anything there that I'll highlight for the April 8th agenda at this point, but we may still have more applications that land on April 8th. Looking forward to seeing all of you this coming Thursday. Thank you so much for your service, and it's been a privilege to work with you. Thank you.
And I just want to say that it has been an absolute pleasure to work with Heather as director. She has been such a great support and her ability to answer all of our questions is outstanding. We will absolutely miss you, Heather. And Alder Figueroa Cole.
All I wanted to say was thank you for adding the Legistar numbers, and then you dump that on us. Ah, thank you, Heather. You have been absolutely amazing since the day I arrived at this job, and I really appreciate you. And this whole role as a commissioner, I don't know how I would have gotten through without all the support that we had gotten from you and staff. So thank you so much. And thank you for the Legistar numbers.
Commissioner Spencer.
Yeah, I just wanted to add thank you, Heather, for everything you've done for us. And, as a friend, I've known you for such a long time too. And, thank you for your support. I'll be sad to miss you on Thursday, but that just means we'll have to get together outside of our little computer screens and outside of Plan Commission. So, thank you for everything. I can't even encompass everything I have to say to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I am looking for a motion to adjourn. Alder Field moves. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Duncan. And I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, I will see you on Thursday in person. And thank you for all your work. See you Thursday. Bye-bye.